I want to be a worker for the Lord. I want to love and trust His holy word. I want to sing and pray and be busy every day in the vineyard of the Lord. I will work, I will pray.
Morning. It's good to see you all this morning. Glad that you're able to be here. We know that some are not able to come, but we're glad that we have the technology so that if they couldn't be here physically, they can tune in and follow along online. Also, I didn't at the 9 o'clock hour. I just want to say I do appreciate Brother Glasgow. I'm glad he was able to get away. I would have liked to see him this morning, but I'm here so he could get away, so I don't get to see him this morning. But wish him and his family the best. And also Joshua Cantrell, I follow what's going on with him and keep up with him, and always hoping and wishing the best for him also. If you don't have your Bible open, turn to Luke chapter 16. Luke chapter 16. While you do that, I want to say a quick word about Luke chapter 15. When you look at Luke chapter 15 and verse number 1, the Bible tells us that Jesus is keeping company with, talking with publicans and sinners. You know, he spent a lot of time with folks who were not popular among the religious elite. And so Luke 15 tells us he's spending time with and teaching those folks, and that the Pharisees and the scribes or the lawyers were not happy about it. And so they were being critical of Jesus for spending time with people who were not considered polite society. And because of the criticism that he received in that context, he gave 3 parables that we're all pretty familiar with in Luke 15, right? He talks about the lost sheep and the lost coin, and he talks about the one we call the prodigal son. I want to spend some time talking about what he said right after that. Now, I'd imagine that a lot of us have spent time thinking about, and we've heard a lot of lessons about the lost sheep and the lost coin, and especially the prodigal son. But that was not the end of what Jesus had to say on this occasion. Let's look at Luke chapter 16. I call this the parable of the shrewd steward, or you might say the wise steward. It's one of the more often overlooked parables that Jesus gave. It's one of my favorites, though, so let's talk about it this morning. Luke chapter 16, beginning in verse number 1. The Bible says, and he said also unto the disciples, which is why I wanted to go back and look at what he said in Luke 15, because this is a continuation of statements that he had already been making. He said also unto the disciples, there was a certain rich man who had a steward, and the same was accused unto him that he was wasting his goods. First observation I want to make, think about this man's position. Jesus says there was a certain rich man and he had a steward. Now, this man was rich and he had the steward. The steward is the one who is responsible for some portion of the rich man's goods. This is a good position to be in. I mean, if you can't have a bunch of money of your own, being able to have responsibility for somebody else's is pretty good. A certain rich man, he had a steward, and the Bible says he was accused, though, of wasting his goods. A man that didn't appreciate the privilege that he had, didn't appreciate the opportunity he had been given, wasn't responsible for the things that had been put in his charge. He was accused now of wasting the rich man's good. Now, the number one rule for a steward, Paul said, is that he must be faithful. This man had not been faithful. The rich man, the master, finds out, and he's going to have to do something about it. Look at verse number 2. He calls him and says to him, what is this that I hear of you? Render an account of your stewardship, because you can no longer be the steward. That was my interpretation of it. You can't no longer be steward. He's in a good position, but he has a problem. If you are a steward, if you are responsible for somebody else's goods, at some point in time, there's going to be what we call a reckoning. The master has hastened to the reckoning because he's gotten an ill report. Now, I don't know what the master's doing, see, because he's got other things to do. I have entrusted this man to take care of these goods, so I'm not standing here looking over his shoulder. I'm letting him do what I task him with doing while I do something else. But somebody somewhere brought the master a bad report. So he stops what he's doing now, and he goes to the steward and he says, now, wait a minute. I hear you've been wasting my goods. Go ahead and bring me the records so we can do the accounting right now. I want an account of your stewardship. He tells him where this is going. You can no longer be steward. You're fired. This is a predicament now. Now he has the problem. Look at verse number 3. The steward says within himself. See, the first thing we have to do when we have a problem is make an assessment of ourselves. I tell you what, we oftentimes want to project on to other people. When something doesn't go the way we want it to go, or it's not the way we think it should be, we start blaming everybody else. But this man starts with himself. He could have said, now who is it that told him I wasn't doing a good job? Well, it really doesn't matter, does it? Because you weren't doing a good job. He first makes an assessment of himself. He says, what shall I do, seeing that my Lord takes away the stewardship from me? I have lost this good position that I had. He says, I have not the strength to dig, to beg, I am ashamed. Now listen, there's a lot of things I could say about this man, but I want to say I respect the fact that he's honest about who and what he is. I'm too lazy to do real work. That's what he said. And I have too much pride to beg. Well, now, if you want to take care of yourself, you just limited your prospects, didn't you? Because you don't want to do a good day's work. You're not willing to bend your back to make sure that you have food to put in your mouth, and you don't want to ask somebody for a handout. Well, that just doesn't leave a whole lot of options. But he's honest with himself. I mean, he should be willing to work to take care of himself, but he's not. At least he's honest, okay? He's not really a godly man, but at least he's being honest with himself. Now listen to this. Verse number 4. I am resolved what to do. He has a plan, he says. That when I am put out of the stewardship, they may receive me into their houses. I need to have a plan for where I'm going because I cannot stay here. The master's made that much plain. You can no longer be my steward. Now, if you're the steward, the master has an estate, so that means you have a place to live. You don't need a house of your own because you live in his place. The master has servants who are taking care of everything. That means you don't actually have to do any hard work. Other people are doing it. You just have to oversee it. But when he puts you out of his estate, you don't have a place of your own to go. There are no servants to take care of everything. You don't have food to put into your belly. So you need to start making a plan. And you look at yourself and you acknowledge to yourself, there's some things that I should do that I'm honestly just not willing to do. That's just the weakness that I have. I should be willing to work and do a good day's work in order to take care of myself, but I'm not. And I could go out here and ask people for a handout, but I have too much pride to do it. So I have decided what I'm going to do and listen to his plan, so that they can receive me into their houses when I'm put out of the stewardship. I need somewhere else to go because I can't stay here. Now look at his plan. Verse number 5. And calling to him each of his Lord's debtors. Now his Lord is obviously a man of means. He has his own stuff and he has people who owe him stuff. He calls each of his master's debtors and he says to the first, how much do you owe my Lord? Now, I'm not sure why he's asking this question. Because he's supposed to know how much. Now, listen, if he honestly doesn't know, that may explain why he's such a poor steward, right? I mean, your job is to watch over your master's business and you don't know how much this guy owes, but I mean, maybe he honestly doesn't know. And it may be that he's just asking for a dramatic effect, like he does know, but he wants to give the other person an opportunity to acknowledge. I'm not sure exactly why he asked the question, but he does ask the question. And then listen to the answer in verse number 6. He says, 100 measures of oil. I owe 100. And he says to him, take your bond and sit down quickly and write 50. I tell you what I'm going to do. I am going to settle your debt with my master for 50 cents on the dollar. I'm going to give you a break. Now, who does that help? Because he owed the master 100. And he's about to cut the master out 50%. Now, why is he doing that? He's not looking out for the master's interest. He's trying to curry favor with this person by giving them a break because he said, I need somewhere to go when my master puts me out. And I'm hoping that I can kind of set things up where this guy will receive me when I'm put out of my estate. Listen to this. Then he says to another, verse number 7, and how much do you owe? And he says, 100 measures of wheat. I also owe 100. And he says to him, take your bond and write 80 or 80. I'll let you settle the debt for 80 cents on the dollar. Now, if he could pay 80 cents on the dollar, he could go on ahead and pay the 100, right? If he could have paid the 80, why didn't you collect the 80 before? Why is the master taking all these losses if all you had to do was meet with these folks and ask them and they already have it, so why haven't you collected? He's been doing such a poor job, but now see his feet are being put to the fire. Now he feels a sense of exigency. Now that he's about to be put out, he wants to go ahead and do what he's supposed to have been done. Go ahead and write 80. Now the master's about to take a loss of 20. But he's not looking out for the master's interest. He's looking out for himself. He's going to get put out. And he doesn't have a place to go. He's trying to set it up so that somebody else will receive him when the master puts him out. Now listen to this. This is the part that usually throws people. In verse number 8, his Lord commends, this is Jesus commenting. Jesus is explaining what happened. Now, he did these deals, and the master finds out. And then Jesus says, his Lord commended the unjust, the unrighteous steward because he had done wisely. I believe the old version says shrewdly. That's where I get the word shrewd from. Now, think about this. I am the master over this great estate, and I have a man whose job it is to take care of my interest. He's done that so poorly that people have come to me and told on him that he's doing a bad job. When I find out that he's doing a bad job, I go to him and I say, listen, get the books together. Let's sit down and go over the books because I need to have a reckoning with you because you are going to be fired. The man then runs around town and cuts all these deals to settle the accounts, but he's not settling the accounts in a way that is in the master's best interest. He's looking out for himself. Now listen, when he tells the man who owes 100 measures of oil that he will let the debt go for 50, he doesn't have any measures of oil, the steward. He doesn't have anything. He's cutting deals with the master's goods. When he tells that man that he will accept 80 measures of wheat instead of 100, that's not his wheat. He just has access to, he has influence over, he gets to use it, but it's not his, and he uses it to set up his own future. Now the master, when he finds out, he said, well, that guy was pretty shrewd. I mean, he's taking a loss. The master is taking a loss, but he's recognizing that this guy was a smooth operator. He did what was in his own best interest in the limited time that he had because he knew he was going to get fired. Jesus, in telling this story, says that this steward, did you see it, was unrighteous. Jesus didn't say that what he did was godly. He said he was unrighteous. He was unjust. He was carnal. He was worldly. But the master looked at him and said, that was pretty slick what he did. I mean, that was pretty shrewd what he did. Now, I'm still going to fire him, but that was pretty slick what he did. Now, you have to see that. You have to understand exactly what happened there. The master's not saying that what he did was good and godly. He's just saying it was pretty shrewd. He knew I was going to fire him, and he used a little bit of time that he had and the little bit of influence that he had over my goods to set himself up so he'd have somewhere to go when I kicked him out. Now, listen to what Jesus says about this. Verse number 8, in the second part. He says, for the sons of this world are for their own generation wiser than the sons of light. Now, what is his point? In a carnal setting, in a worldly setting, in an ungodly setting, Jesus is saying there is something that even ungodly people seem to understand that the children of light don't always seem to understand. Now, what is that? You cannot stay here. You don't get to stay here. And ungodly people put in a situation like this, they get it. You're getting put out at the end of this month. Every thought you have once you find that out is on where can I go when I get put out. I have 30 days, got about 20 now. I have 30 days and then I have to leave this house and I don't have another one. That means all of my attention, all of my focus is on where can I go after this. And I have to use this little bit of time that I have to set myself up so that when they put me out, I have somebody who'll take me in. You're going to be fired from this job at the end of the month. As soon as you find that out, all of your focus becomes on finding another job. And Jesus is saying that the children of this world, people of this generation, they understand that when they cannot stay in this place, they need to now focus on where they're going next. And that means, you know what? While I have this time, everybody that I know I'm going to talk to and see if they have some connections to help me find another job. I'm trying to set myself up so that when I'm put out of here, somebody else is going to take me in. He's saying carnal people seem to understand that. But children of the light, God's own people, don't seem to get it. Now, he's going to extrapolate on this. He's going to explain this. But see, that is the principle. That is the point that Jesus is making. You can learn something from the heathen sometimes. Circumstances are different. He's not telling you to go out here and rob and cheat and lie and all that. But he's saying, see, that mindset of setting yourself up for what's next, that part is right. Now, he calls the man unrighteous. He's not telling you to do what he did, but he's telling you to learn from what motivated him to do what he did. Listen to this in verse number 9. And I say to you, make to yourselves friends by means of the mammon or the money of unrighteousness, that when it shall fail, they may receive you into the eternal tabernacles. What is this point? Leverage the things that you have at your disposal now. Leverage the money, leverage the influence, leverage the relationships that you have while you're on earth so that you can set yourselves up for people, for God to receive you into heavenly eternal tabernacles. Shouldn't this be simple? You cannot stay here. You're going to be put out. Everybody who has ever drawn a breath on this planet is gone if they're not drawing breath right now. And all of us are going to die like everybody who's come before us. That's just how this works. You cannot stay here. Do you recognize that? Do you understand that? If you do recognize that, if you do understand that, then listen, God is saying to you, you have 30 days. Now, what are you spending your time doing? Now, you just got the notice that you have to leave. What are you goofing off and doing? All of your attention, all of your focus, all of your time should be on setting yourself up so that God can receive you into heavenly tabernacle so you have somewhere to go. Jesus is saying the heathen seems to understand that. So if you have access to money and resources and relationships and so forth right now, guess what? When you die, they won't go with you. You should be using those things to curry favor with God. What's in God's interest? How can you use what's in your hands right now to curry favor with God, to please Him, so that when you leave this place, He'll open the door for you to go into the next place? He says in verse number 10, he that is faithful in a very little is faithful also in much, and he that is unrighteous in a very little is unrighteous also in much. If therefore you have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon, who will commit to your trust the true riches? See, I think this is interesting because what he's doing is setting up a dichotomy here. He's comparing two things. Some people look at what they have in this life as if this is true riches, when in reality, God says, this is just a little. I'm testing you. I'm giving you an opportunity to show me that you can be faithful with a little. You know, when my kids were small, they would come to me and they may want something, and they'd be satisfied if I gave them a quarter or a dollar or what have you. Oh, here's a dollar. Go do what you want with it. They'd be satisfied with that. And to me, that was nothing. But I want to see how you use it. See, I really am interested in how you use it. If I give you $5, what are you going to do with it? Because we sit down and talk about, okay, somebody just gave you $5. And where's the money going? Because, see, I know it's just $5, but we have to give something back to God. Don't we have to do that first? Before we go and buy candy and toys and all that, we have to give something back to God. Oh, okay. Now, you have $5. Are you going to spend, maybe we give the Lord one of the dollars. Are you going to spend all four of the other ones on yourself? I just want to see how you use it. Is there anything in your life that you need that you don't have? Because there's some people over here who have nothing. Maybe we need to, before we buy anything else, maybe we need to share what we have with somebody. I want to see how you use it. And if I get the idea that you're not a good steward of money, guess what? I'm not going to give you very much. That's just how it is. I'm testing you, and you can show yourself worthy. And if you show yourself worthy, I'll give you more and more and more because I know you'll use it right. If you won't use it right, guess what? I'm not going to give it to you. God is saying, I'm just giving you nickels and dimes and quarters. I want to see how you use it. And some of us hang on to these nickels and dimes and quarters as if this is the real thing, and it's not. God has given us an opportunity to show that we can be faithful. Listen now, I'm just the kind of guy, I just say what I'm really thinking. I'm just that kind of person. Now, I don't know y'all. You take it personally if you want to. But the fact is, some of us are not showing ourselves faithful. That's just the bottom line. Some of us hang on to the clothes that we have and the car that we drive and the house that we live in as if this is what God intends for us. And I'm telling you, it's not. He's given us an opportunity to show that we can handle what he really has in store for us. And Jesus says, if you show that you can't handle this, he's not going to give you the real thing. He's not going to give it to you. If you're satisfied with the clothes you have on your back because they have a little symbol on there. If you're satisfied with that, then go ahead and enjoy it because that's all you're going to get. Go ahead. Live it up because there's nothing left for you. That's not what he intends. These are not the true riches. You see the question he asked? If you have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon, nickels and dimes, who will commit to your trust true riches? You're showing God that you're not a good steward by not handling aright the little bit that you have. We should be leveraging our worldly wealth. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter how much it is. See, because he gave talents to different people. He gave somebody 1, he gave somebody 2, he gave somebody 5. He gave them what they could handle. What you have is what you have because that's what you can handle. If you got 1, don't worry about the man who has 5. You got your hands full with the one you have. But you should be using whatever you have in a way that demonstrates to God that you can be trusted. He says in verse 12, if you have not been faithful in that which is another's, who will give to you that which is your own? Now, see, listen to me. The steward knew that all the stuff he was dealing with wasn't his. It was somebody else's. And so he was handling it, a good steward would handle it in a way that is consistent with the owner's interest. When he was slothful, not looking out for the owner, guess what? He was fired. The things that we have don't belong to us. I don't know why. I don't know why. The heathen can understand this in their context, and the child of God sometimes can't get their minds wrapped around it. Whatever you have in your bank account, it's not yours. I'm sorry. I know you went to work last week. It's not yours. It's not yours. I know your name is on it. I said it's not yours. It belongs to the master. It belongs to the Lord. And you have to use it in a way that's consistent with the master's interest. If you don't, you will be dismissed. That's how this works. In verse number 13, he says, no servant can serve 2 masters. I know you think you can, but you can't. I know sometimes people live their lives as if we can do both, but Jesus says you cannot. You cannot. He says it's impossible. You cannot serve 2 masters, so you have to make a decision. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon or money. It's just not going to work. You're going to put someone or something first. And God always said he won't be second. Someone or something has to be first. And God said you shall have, listen to it, no other gods before me. I got to be first. I have to be first. And sometimes the children of light don't seem to understand that. I have seen Christians compromise their faithfulness to God for a job. I have seen Christians compromise their relationship with God for money. I have seen Christians compromise their relationship with God for popularity or standing in the community and with different people. You can decide that your boss at work is more important than the Lord of heaven if you want to, but it means in God's eyes that you hate him. That's what he said. Either you're going to love the one and hate the other, or hate the one and love the other. That's it. If you try to put him second, you might as well be putting him last. I know that there are some concrete scenarios that you can kind of go through. I talk to people about these kinds of things over the years, concrete scenarios you can go through where people say, well, I have this financial difficulty and that financial difficulty, and I get it. But I'm saying to you, you're going to put God first or not. It may surprise you to learn that you can get another job. I've had several. Not long after I got married, I had to show my wife how to quit a job. We can get another one of these. See, but what God says we have to do, life is going to be built around that. He's going to always be first. The heathen in this story, this steward, he understood that. Once it clicked in his mind that he couldn't stay where he was, whose interest was he looking out for? He's looking out for the interest of the people who could receive him when he left, because he was leaving one way or the other. We're leaving one way or the other. Whose interest are we looking out for? Jesus calls this man two things. He says he's unrighteous. Now pay attention to that, because people get confused wrapping around the axle thinking that we're supposed to be, selling people out and cutting corners. And no. He called him unrighteous. But he also called him wise. Please pay attention to why he called him wise. And don't let the heathen be wiser than the children of light. I just want to make a couple of points here. One of them is we all need to realize we cannot stay here. I don't care how comfortable you think it is. I don't care how much you like it. The fact is, we all have a slip that's saying we have to leave at some time, and it's probably sooner than we would like it to be. We all have to go. If you can accept that this is not where you're going to end, then you need to give your time and attention to setting up the place where you're going next. Jesus' advice is that you need to curry favor with the ones who can receive you into heavenly tabernacles. Now, there is an alternative to that. God can receive you into heaven, or you can get shut out of heaven. Now, if you get shut out of heaven, hell is the only alternative. See, because when this is all wrapped up, when this is all said and done, there will be two options. Jesus talks about this in Matthew chapter 25. He talks about it in other places too. There's two options. You can either be received to go and be with the Lord, or you can be cast out where there's going to be burning fire and gnashing of teeth and all that. You should be really focused on that. You don't need, you just have to forgive me. You don't need to be focused on politicians and all that. I don't care, Democrat, Republican, I don't care which flavor of heathen is your favorite. You don't need to be caught up with these people. You need to be focused on God's interests. You don't need to be watch the news if you want to. Don't get caught up with all these people hollering at each other on the news about this issue and that issue. You need to be focused on God's interest. You don't need to worry about trying to acquire the next this and that, the new iPhone, the new whatever. I don't keep up with this stuff that well. I'm limited. But we don't need to worry about all that. What you have in your hand belongs to God, and He gives you a finite window of opportunity to demonstrate that you can be trusted. That should occupy all of your time and attention the same way if you got a notice that said you have to be out of your house by the end of the month. That would be the only thing on your mind. Heaven should be the only thing on your mind right now. It should. And to the extent that you think that you can do both, let me just caution you that one of the two has to be first. And if God isn't first, you might as well make Him last. He's not going to be second. Now listen to this. I mentioned the context to you. The Pharisees and the scribes were ridiculing Jesus for spending time with publicans and sinners. And so Jesus gave the parables that He gave in Luke chapter 15 in order to demonstrate how God sees lost souls. But then in Luke chapter 16, He's turned His attention. See, God is focused on lost souls. So Jesus is focused on lost souls. That's why He was spending His time with publicans and sinners, because He said, listen, the people who are sick, they're the ones who need a physician. And that I came to spend time with people like this. But then in Luke chapter 16, he turns his attention now and he's talking about the Pharisees and the scribes. Instead of being focused on lost souls, what were they focused on? Read verse 14. And the Pharisees, who were lovers of money, heard all these things, and they scoffed at him. See, what's our focus supposed to be? Lost souls. What's the money for? What's the house for? What's the car for? Currying favor with God, and we do that by going after pursuing lost souls. If you love the money too much, you become selfish and you don't want to share what you have. You don't want to give what you have. Give it to the church to help facilitate the work, yes. Give it to people in need as you see them, yes. You don't want to sow what God has given you to bring him a return. If that is true in your heart, that makes you like the Pharisees. They did not put God first. My encouragement is to be shrewd, to be wise. There's too much Bible against lying and cheating and stealing. And I trust that you read this and you understand that's not what Jesus is encouraging at all. He called that man unrighteous, ungodly. But he's encouraging us to look at that man's priorities and to make sure that we're not outdone by the heathen. We use what we have to curry favor with God, so when we leave here, and we're all leaving here, we can go to heaven to be with him. Jesus Christ is the Son of God. God sent him into the world to die for my sin and for yours. And he calls us to live for him. He died for us, and he calls us to live for him. We do that because we believe in him. Do you believe that Jesus is the Son of God? Do you believe that he died for you? If you do, that ought to change the way you see the world. It ought to cause you to turn around. It ought to cause you to repent. Repent of your sin, whatever it is. And for a lot of us, an ungodly esteem for money and things is part of our sin problem. Repent of that. We say with our mouths we believe that Jesus is the Son of God. It's no problem because we believe it in our heart. We just fix our mouths to say it because we do believe it. We submit to baptism because Jesus said that we have to be baptized in order to be saved. He that believes and is baptized will be saved. And then listen, we have to live a faithful life after that. And part of living a faithful life is prioritizing God's interests, using the few things that we have in this life to set ourselves up for the next life. That has to be our focus. That has to be your focus. If it hasn't been, how about you take these few moments to make it right? If it hasn't been, don't worry about what other people think. Don't worry about how other people are going to perceive you. You should be thinking about how God perceives you. If it hasn't been your focus, we invite you this moment to make it your focus. If we can help you, we would love to. If we can pray with you and for you, we would love to. If you would like to give your life to Christ, we would love to help you do that. You just have to let us know that we can help you with those things. As we stand and sing this song of invitation, please let us know how we can help.
To Jesus for the cleansing power. Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you fully trusted in his grace this hour? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you washed in the blood, in the soul-cleansing blood of the Lamb? Are your garments spotless? Are they white as snow? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb?